The wind rolled low across the open plains, carrying with it the scent of hay, dust, and distant rain. The sun had dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose as the day surrendered to evening. On the outskirts of Red Rock, Wyoming, stood the Willow Creek Ranch, a stretch of land so wide it seemed to meet the horizon itself. It belonged to Caleb Turner, a man as weathered and quiet as the mountains behind him. He hadn't smiled much in the 2 years since his wife passed, leaving him to raise twin boys, Eli and Owen, barely 6 years old. The ranch was too big, the work too endless, and the loneliness too deep. He'd tried hiring help before, but they never stayed. Folks said Caleb had grown too cold, too quiet. Maybe they were right. That morning, when a knock echoed on his door, Caleb expected another drifter looking for day labor. But when he opened it, he found a woman, thin, pale, and clutching a worn satchel like her life depended on it. "Mr. Turner?" she asked softly, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Name's Annie Doyle. I heard you were looking for help." Caleb studied her. Her dress was patched and faded, her hands rough from work, and yet her eyes, deep brown and kind, held something he hadn't seen in a long while: hope. "You clean barns?" he asked gruffly. "I clean whatever needs cleanin'," she said, standing straighter. "I can cook too if you've got mouths to feed." Caleb's gaze flicked to the twins peeking shyly from behind his legs. "I've got two," he muttered, "and a barn that's seen better days." She gave a small, tired smile. "Then I reckon I can start right now." By noon, Annie was knee-deep in hay and dust. She moved quietly but with purpose, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair tied back under a faded bonnet. The barn smelled of old leather and would polish by the time she was done. The twins had followed her around at first, curious about the new lady. "Why you talk so soft?" little Owen asked. "'Cause I reckon horses don't like shoutin'," Annie replied, handing him a broom. "You help me with this corner, and I'll tell you a secret." The boy's eyes widened. "What secret?" "That hard work makes you strong," she said with a wink. "And kind hearts make you brave." By the time Caleb came out to check, the twins were giggling, sweeping piles of straw as Annie hummed an old hymn under her breath. For the first time in months, laughter filled the barn. Caleb stood in the doorway, hat low over his eyes, watching. He didn't say a word, but something in his chest, something long frozen, shifted. Days turned into weeks. Annie worked from dawn till dark, never complaining, never asking for more than a plate of food and a place to sleep in the small loft above the tack room. She sang softly while she worked, and her gentle ways seemed to calm everyone, animals and children alike. The twins adored her. They followed her like shadows, bringing her wildflowers and asking endless questions. Annie answered each one with patience, even when Caleb couldn't. One evening, a storm rolled over the plains, fierce and sudden. The rain came in sheets, the thunder rattling the windows of the small house. Caleb had been in town and was late returning. Annie stayed behind with the boys, her lantern flickering as the wind howled outside. When Caleb finally rode in, drenched and cold, lightning split the sky above him. He rushed into the barn to check the animals, and stopped dead. There, in the soft glow of the lantern, sat Annie on a pile of hay, her shawl wrapped around both twins, who were fast asleep in her arms. She was humming softly, a lullaby almost lost to the storm's roar. Her eyes lifted when she saw him, startled, but she didn't move. "They were scared," she whispered. "Didn't want to sleep alone." Caleb's breath caught. The sight of his boys, peaceful for once, safe and warm, tugged at something deep inside him. He stepped closer, the rain dripping from his hat. "You didn't have to," he began, then stopped. The words came hard to him. "I know," she said softly, smiling faintly, "but I wanted to." He swallowed, nodding once before turning away, though not before she saw the glint of something human, something tender, in his eyes. After that night, something changed between them. Caleb started spending more time near the barn, offering small help with chores that didn't really need doing. Annie would tease him quietly, her laughter like sunlight after a storm. One morning, as the twins raced off to chase the chickens, Caleb leaned against the fence beside her. You got away with them boys, he said quietly. I had a boy once, she replied after a pause, eyes on the horizon. He didn't make it through the winter. Caleb's throat tightened. I'm sorry. She nodded. It was a long time ago. But I reckon God gives us new chances if we're willin' to see 'em. Caleb looked at her then, really looked. The strength behind her gentleness, the warmth she brought into his home, the way his boys laughed again because of her. And he realized he didn't just want her help anymore. He wanted her. A few weeks later, Red Rock held its annual harvest fair. Caleb hadn't gone since his wife's death, but this year, Annie convinced him. The boys tugged at his hands, excited to show their prize pumpkins. Annie wore a borrowed blue dress, her hair loose for the first time, and when she stepped into the sunlight, Caleb felt his heart stumble. They laughed, ate apple pie, and for a moment, it almost felt like a family. When a slow fiddle tune started near the bonfire, Annie hesitated at the edge of the dance floor. Caleb offered his hand. Don't know how to dance, he muttered. Good, she teased, taking his hand. Neither do I. The music swelled around them. Her hand fit perfectly in his, her eyes bright under the stars. When the song ended, neither moved away. I ain't been happy in a long time, Caleb said quietly. Maybe it's time you were, she whispered. Winter came early that year. Snow covered the pastures, and the nights grew long and cold. Annie stayed on, saying she'd help till spring. But by now, the thought of her leaving made Caleb's chest ache. One night he found her packing her few belongings. You're leavin'? He asked, voice rough. I promised I'd stay till the season ended, she said softly. You've got things runnin' smooth now. You and the boys'll be fine. Fine, he echoed, stepping closer. Annie, since you came here, this place feels alive again. I feel alive again. She looked up, eyes shimmering. You don't need me, Caleb. He shook his head. You're wrong. We all do. The twins' footsteps padded down the stairs, sleepy-eyed. Miss Annie, you goin' away? Owen asked, rubbing his eyes. Annie knelt, her voice trembling. I have to, sweetheart. Eli wrapped his arms around her neck. Don't go. You're our mama now. Tears filled her eyes. Caleb knelt beside them, his hand resting over hers. Annie, he said quietly, stay. Not for work. For us. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then Annie nodded, tears spilling freely as she smiled through them. All right, cowboy, she whispered. Guess you just hired yourself a wife. The following spring, the ranch bloomed brighter than it had in years. The barn smelled of new hay and laughter, and the sound of the twins chasing each other echoed through the fields. Annie's blue shawl hung by the door, and Caleb's heart, once buried in grief, now beat steady beside hers. Sometimes, at sunset, he'd find her in the barn, humming that same soft lullaby, the boys asleep nearby. And every time he'd smile.